Buddy and Dr. Keith Smithson. We're going to have a lot of fun today, talk about a lot of interesting and fun things about getting in the zone and what that means, what vision focus and mental focus mean and how they work together. And I'm going to jump right into it. So we have a very special guest here today. I'm going to let Buddy introduce himself because he's got a cool story and he's going to do it much better justice than I. So Buddy, take it from here, man.
All right, Keith. Yeah, hi. It's Buddy Biancalana with Zone Motion. And a little bit about my background. I was a very marginal major league player. Even though I was a first-round pick, I could never really figure out how to stay on the lineup on a regular basis at the major league level. But I had a really incredible experience in the '85 World Series. I was a shortstop for the Royals. And for whatever reason, everything just slowed down for me in that series. And I wasn't thinking, and everything I did was very fluid and effortless. It was really the best baseball I'd ever played. Every ball hit me right in the sweet spot of the glove at shortstop. Every throw came out of my hand like butter off a hot knife. I hit 73 points higher than my career average, and I really had the feeling that I couldn't do anything wrong even if I tried. It was really a crazy experience. There was one play in left field where I went to retrieve a bad throw, or a throw that kicked away from our second baseman, and I barehanded, picked it up and threw to second base, kind of wheeled and threw. It was no big deal. But the feeling I had in that moment was, oh my gosh, I feel like I could have kicked the ball perfectly, So it was an amazing experience. I was the leading vote getter of MVP for position players, although Brett Saberhagen, our Cy Young Award winning pitcher, won the award, and rightfully so. But 18 months later, Keith, I was out of the major leagues because I had no idea what happened in my mind that allowed me to experience the game as slowing down and not thinking, and with fluid and effortless motion. So that's my expertise now, and that's what I teach in many sports.
Yeah, that's so cool. And it's such an amazing story because, as an athlete myself, playing sports through college and coaching my kids today, you hear the word a lot, getting in the zone and focusing in the zone and keeping your eye on the ball and all these kind of, arbitrary statements. But, what in the world, when we talk about that, what do people in the world think when they say getting in the zone? What do you hear?
Well, a few things. I think, some people don't know that it exists, right? We only know what we know in life. And so for me, I think there's nothing more important, first of all, to know that we don't know what we don't know, and to know that we can't see what we can't see, so that we are open to other ways and more information to come to us. And so some people think that you just stumble upon the zone, and that's exactly what happened to me, right? All of a sudden I get in the World Series, I play the absolute best baseball of my life. How did it happen? I had no idea. And the subsequent anxiety that I felt to try and repeat it, right? And the expectations, people say, just do what you did last time. You had a great game. All you got to do is do the same thing. Well, what the heck happened? I don't know what happened. And so that's what we've been able to quantify is what does happen. And more importantly, how do we repeat it? How do we build and strengthen and maintain the neural pathways in the brain that allow an athlete to have that experience of the game slowing down and not thinking, and with fluid effortless motion and perfect timing. So people don't,
have that conversation. I think it was fascinating and really eye-opening to me as well. That there's been a lot of research in this. This is not just, your sort of theories at this point on getting on the zone. So I know you've done a lot of research. You've done a lot of backstory as to sort of how someone gets in the zone, but what does the zone mean to Buddy at this point now? Not just, guessing how to get there. What does the zone mean to you?
Well, what it means to me is that you're accessing a deeper, quieter state of the mind, which is the alpha brainwave state, and generating your intention to perform your task from that deeper level. And that's kind of an alpha theta state. It's a combination of the alpha and theta brainwave states that allow for a deeper, more inner focused state of mind. And it's because in this outer world, it's so easy to get so focused on the outer, right? To whatever, hit the ball, throw the strike. However, if you ask 100 athletes in any sport how they felt when they played their best, if they take the time to think about it, they'll typically describe it in three very abstract ways: that everything slowed down and they weren't thinking, and everything was just fluid, effortless, and the tight. I'm not saying, I was just so locked in on the baseball, although that is a byproduct, right? You are able to lock in, and that's the vision component, which I know we'll get to here. But it's a very, very abstract state, and people just don't know what's happening. And, maybe people have had the experience where they're driving home from work, and maybe it's a half-hour drive, and all of a sudden they pull into their driveway and they don't remember anything about the drive home, and they're just there, although they do know that they were driving safely and they were able to respond to any situation that might come their way. And so really understanding the dynamics, and I wish I had understood the dynamics after the World Series. Basically I was confused. And, you start reading, and people, big expectations in Kansas City were that I was going to play the same way in the regular season that I played in the postseason, which I had no idea how it happened. And so actually a zone experience can, if you don't know what's taking place in the neurophysiology, it can actually create more confusion and stress and strain, because the unknown and wanting to get back there, and the expectations that you have on yourself and management may have on you, and fans and media and their family, friends, can be stressful.
Yeah, so and we've all heard those stories of Michael Jordan saying at certain games the basket just looked like it was the size of the ocean. He couldn't miss no matter what he was doing, and you've heard those kind of stories in multiple different sports. And I guess the question is then, what do the athletes think they're supposed to do to get in the zone? What does the world think that getting in the zone means? What's the misconception of how they think they get in the zone?
Right. Well, we know the importance of hard work, and I think most athletes think that if I just work hard, because that's what I did after the World Series. I worked very hard to try and maintain that level of play, and I was going the opposite direction. So number one is they think that if they just work hard. Number two, if they relax, if you just relax, you're going to have a better chance of performing well. And that's absolutely true. Three is visualizing your success, and that's something that's true. But there's one thing that's more important. It's that alpha theta brainwave state that allows the information that you're processing through the eyes, I may add, in sports, processing that allows the information to move to the cerebellum, part of the motor system that's able to calculate where your body is and where it needs to be, and allows the more subtle muscles to become enlivened and the bigger muscles just to play more of the supporting role. And so that's the biggest component to being in the zone. And so there are a lot of things that are very, very important. And certainly the eyes are important, very important. And the brain is the operating system, the muscles. So making sure the brain is in that alpha theta state so information can flow properly to the muscles is key.
Yeah, so and it's amazing. So we have now a way, a method, a playlist, if you will, of how to get into the zone, right? And this is something that you can teach. It's something that you're building an entire operation around. Teaching and instructing those to get into the zone the right way, to go through these steps and to understand these steps. So what does getting in the zone mean to you? How do we instruct this? How do we teach the right way to get into the zone?
That's a great question. So, right. And initially, our work takes place on the field, whatever the sport. I've worked in 13 professional sports and over 20 amateur sports. And so initially, the training takes place while the athlete is performing their required task. And we teach them how to move information through the brain so that allows all the muscles to fire synchronistically, as opposed to there being an imbalance. And that's when the athlete starts to experience everything starting to slow down and not thinking, and with fluid, effortless motion and perfect timing. And the chance of soft tissue injury is reduced because there's fluidity of motion in the body. And so that's where the initial training takes place. The ongoing training we have on our MVP platform, where there are many different trainings and visualizations and meditations and things like that will continue to strengthen and maintain the neural pathways that are necessary for the athlete to have those peak zone experiences. Years ago, before I really understood as much about the brain-body connection as I do now, I used to think that I could spend 3 or 4 days with an athlete, of which I did, and they did very, very well. But there was a slow, steady decline in their performance. It wasn't off a cliff, but just a slow, steady decline. And I really didn't understand at the time what was happening. Now I understand. Oh, unless you're continuing to strengthen, the neural pathways, you are going to drop off. And so, there are actually studies now, and you may know about them, Keith, that if you're not learning something new, you're actually forgetting what you already know. And so a big part of what we do is the ongoing strengthening of the neural pathways so that the athlete can start to make that state of mind that they want when things slow down and not thinking in fluid, effortless motion. That becomes more their default state.
Yeah, and that's where having sort of I don't know how you refer to yourself. I think you use a mental coach, right? I mean, having someone that can really be around to kind of not just allow you to flow in out of the zone. As you said, many athletes probably do it almost by accident. Certain times they just had this zone-like experience like you had, but truly understanding how they got there, how to get back there, and how to stay there is I assume something that's really critical to avoid that anxiety piece of how did I get here and how do I get back.
Yeah, exactly. And the sounds like it might be freezing up here, but the the zone, people talk about the flow state, and I say, well, zone is a little bit different because the zone works at the intersection of the mental and the physical. The physical is very, very important. And when mechanics are based on physics, the proper kinetic chain, and the brain is in the right spot, boom, everything comes together perfectly. But if the mechanics are not based on physics and it's just some philosophy, then it becomes hit and miss. If there's weakness per se in the lower half of the body because of the way they're striding or not striding, right? Those messages get sent to the brain. The brain senses something's wrong. It throws the system off. And so, one can be in flow but not be in the zone. Is what I like to say. So the zone is dependent upon the right state of mind and the mechanics based on physics.
Yeah, and I think this is where you and I, really kind of got together and had a very common language. Is that I hear a lot of similar things from coaches, from trainers, of an athlete who has great mechanics, right? Who can get into the cage and take his swings, and if he's not performing well, let's just take more swings. Let's just keep working. And here you have an athlete who may not be mentally grounded, who may not have the right mental state to be a good, solid hitter or performer in baseball or any other sport, right? And for me, it's the visual link, and it's whether or not they're actually seeing the target and processing the target properly, as you mentioned. So I'd love to talk a little bit about that because, again, you've mentioned you work with multiple sports, but, baseball obviously near and dear to your heart. And right. We hear a lot, how visually demanding that game is. And so someone like myself that's never seen a 97-mile-an-hour fastball, how difficult is hitting a baseball visually?
Very difficult. I mean, if the eyes aren't good, right, that's kind of like the eyes are the gateway to the soul, but they're also the gateway to the brain and the gateway to the proper mechanics and everything. So it's essential to be able to recognize, which is what we do with the eyes, recognize, the ball coming at us. Where's it going to be when it crosses the plate? Is it moving in? Is it moving away? So there's lots of information that we're taking in that the brain can help process. But if we're not visually seeing it the way that we can, that's, like there's an old saying, well begun is half done. Well, if it doesn't begin well, you're rolling the dice. So we want it to begin well. And so the eyes are the gateway to everything else that needs to take place for success in baseball.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I mean, I think the gateway is something that, we say it in several different terms, almost like sometimes the eye is the satellite dish, right? It's just collecting information. So, a lot of people thinking about sports and vision performance is, well, I see 2020, my vision's clear. 2015, maybe I have great clarity of vision, but clarity of vision is only one piece of the puzzle. Having good muscular alignment, good physical skills, eye tracking, being able to keep your eyes on the ball is another big part of the process of hitting so that they can locate the target in space and track it properly. But, you make a great point. The link between the eyes taking in the information and then the brain having to make a very quick decision and initiate a motor output, which is a swing, quick enough to be successful, is the neurological link, right? That's the connection point between the eyes and the brain. And so my question to you is that, I know you've been around the game for a long time and you've seen and heard athletes doing things with vision performance and vision enhancement, vision training, if you will. And it's more than just, I need glasses or contact lenses. We have several athletes that don't wear glasses or contact lenses, but do things to enhance the overall vision, the tracking, the muscle focus, the mental focus. What have you seen through the years and what do you think the importance of that training and that enhancement piece is for vision, specifically in baseball, but for other sports as well?
Very big. Years ago when I signed, the Royals were fairly progressive in their vision work, and you and I spoke about it when we visited in Virginia. Dr. Bill Harrison from the West Coast, who spent time with the Royals and doing some of the exercises at the time that were, very, very new to sports. And I know your work is very progressive. but it was, it was helpful. And it's, anything you do to strengthen the mind, strengthen the body, it's going to help you, right? And quite often, again, we don't know what we don't know. And until we start to experience something and we start to have the experience of the benefit of something, right? Or detriment, of course, too. Benefit in this case, then we know. We say, oh, geez, I had no idea. But we always want to be open to what is there. And so I'm a big believer in addressing the eyes. I have to be. I know if the eyes aren't right, I'm not going to be as effective in what I do. So I'm a big proponent of vision training.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, that's come a long way. Even the 20 years that I've been in practice, vision training used to involve strings and beads and things we tape up on the wall, and colored balls that we pitch and throw and catch, and all those kind of things still have some credence, but it was difficult because there wasn't the science behind it. And so the science involved into strobe training glasses and different types of neurological and vision training programs that are computer based. And I think for me, the new world or the new frontier really of vision training is virtual reality. There's an ability to now train in something that's simulating that full 60-foot pitch, as opposed to even hitting in a batting cage, which a lot of time is soft toss from 20 feet or something that way. So simulating an entire flight of the ball to see trajectory and pitch recognition of different types of pitches, and training visual skills in a virtual environment, for a multitude of different sports, I think holds great credence. And for me, it wasn't always the most fun thing in the world to do the vision training that was out there. So we'd institute some things, have some athletes try them, and then, kind of without the fun factor, move on to playing, some basic video game because it was just more fun. So I think tying together fun and engaging experience into something that has visual skills training is what we're building at Skyfall. So Skyfall Sports for me is actually something that there's a project I'm involved with, which is taking the research and founded visual skills training that's out there and putting it into a fun game-like experience that you can play a multitude of different games, have a good time with your family, your friends, your team, your grandma, and at the same time be training visual skills that can then relate to your field of competition. So what's your feeling on things like VR and some of these new frontiers that just really kind of open up something that looks more realistic than just maybe some of the old school stuff?
No, I love VR. I think anytime you can simulate a real life experience, what it's doing is it's strengthening those neural pathways, right? Which we love. It makes what I do easier. The closer someone is to the zone, right, the more profound my teaching can be and can stick, which is what we're all after, right? We want it to stick. And so I'm a huge fan of simulating an experience that strengthens the neural pathways. And when you can, see a pitch coming to you and do the work with a VR glasses on, right? Huge benefit. So I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, and I think you and I just talked about it a little bit before too. That there's physical focus and mental focus. People say stay focused, right? But that involves a couple things really for both of us, right? It's physical focus for me with eyes and muscles and the things that are involved in physically focusing on a target, and then mentally focusing involves that decision making and that processing link. So, but you feel like those two things go together, don't you? With the physical focus and the mental focus, kind of enhancing one enhances the other, kind of thing.
One enhances the other, absolutely. And the thing is Keith, as you know, right, we want it all to be natural. We don't want strain and seeing and focusing and concentrating. We want ease. We want a state of allowance that everything just processes, and that's what we're doing, and that's what we're after.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a demanding game, right? I mean, you certainly don't want anything to be harder than it needs to be, right? We talk about the little leaguer that steps out there that just literally can't see the ball, and he's at quite a disadvantage at swinging at that little tiny target that's tough to do anyway. But certainly at the major league level, you're talking about the unbelievable amount of pitches that come at different velocities and different curvatures and different trajectories, and you've seen the things that are being thrown out there to hitters today. I mean, how do you feel like you would do today stepping up in front of 102 with a slider that's coming at 95? I mean, it's almost scary, isn't it?
It blows me away how athletes are able to perform, in this day and age. I mean, they are bigger, faster, stronger. And, when I go to a game and I see guys throw on 100, I have no idea how a hitter's hitting that, except that I do know that Mentally, they're in better shape than we were when we played, for sure. They, understand more about the mental game. And two, we understand more about the kinetic chain. And so when the kinetic chain's intact, you're not hoping, you're not just wishing to get a hit. You're putting the body in a proper position to have success. And when you do that and the brain's in the right state, dramatically increases performance. I was just going over some stats here. I have a pitcher whose career strikeout to walk ratio was less than 2-to-1. And this year, I just checked his stats, and his strikeout to walk ratio is 24.5-to-1. All because of addressing. Now, he's a pitcher where the eyes are not as important as a hitter, but they're still important, right? All by addressing the processes of the mind. This was a number one draft pick, who was really struggled throughout his career, but had great stuff, but just wasn't processing information while he was delivering a pitch to the plate. And that just minor little adjustment has blown the lid off his performance. So when we're dealing with the eyes and we're dealing with the brain, everything else has a chance to follow the way that we want it to follow. And without those two things, you're literally just rolling the dice and just hope that, you run into a pitch and something happens, and you do it once in a while.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Well, and one of the things that I think, is sort of a fascinating thing too, is that, we learn so much about sport, and we learn so much about vision in sport because everything's quantified, right? Especially in the sport of baseball. After everything we learned from Moneyball and all the different analytics and numbers that go into the game, there's just a lot of opportunity for studies and research. So a lot of times the things we learn from a sports environment are relevant in the everyday world, right? I mean, if we're processing information properly, if we're seeing mentally and visually focusing properly, that seems like that would have an advantage to a young driver, that's on the road driving for the first time at 16 years old, that may not be visually or mentally focusing properly, or a kid in school who's struggling with learning to read or focusing on the mental task of studying for an exam and that sort of thing. So do these sport related skills have life relevance that way too?
Oh, absolutely. Everything affects the autonomic nervous system, right? And so when you can get that autonomic nervous system settled down and to, basically pause before you really respond, that benefits, an athlete or a student athlete in all their life. So we see it across the board in the classroom. I can honestly say that I've never worked with a student athlete who's not improved in the classroom, because they're just accessing more of an alpha theta state where there's this inner focus and more calm, that they can start to make their decisions from that level, and there's just less resistance in their ability to come up with the desired result. And responding in relationships to people, right? Relationships are so important, and we want to always respond in a way where we have full control of our inner state, as opposed to just that knee-jerk reaction that quite often people can regret in how they responded to someone else. So yeah, where we improve in one area of life, it always carries over to the other area, which is great.
Yeah, and I think, just closing out, I think it's one of the things that we get stuck talking about a little bit, is the professional sports environment. Obviously it's fun and exciting to talk about, but you and I have had this conversation, and you're a father as well, a coach as well, and giving some of these skills to kids, right? To kids starting their athletic career that may never make it to the pros, and that's maybe not the goal, but we want them to be successful in their sport, so they enjoy playing their sport. So they learn the life lessons of being on a team and competing for something they want. And for me, having an opportunity through Skyfall Sports to do something that's accessible globally, that's accessible in any population, that's accessible to a kid at any age, to be able to go in, do vision training to improve their game, whatever it might be, have some fun doing it, and then hopefully keep them successful in their game, so they keep playing it, so they keep learning those life lessons of sport. And I know you're passionate about that as well, and in teaching the zone and teaching the way of being mentally sound at a young level. And these youth athletes, it's not just all about the pros for you either, is it, buddy?
Absolutely not. What brings me the greatest gratification in what I do is years ago, I did a research project with golfers. We hooked them up to EEG sensors, and we saw an increase in the theta brainwave state. And over the years, my clients would say, and their wives would tell me, or girlfriends, that their husband or boyfriend is just in a better mood. And I couldn't quite understand it, except I'd say, well, they're performing better, so that makes sense. And they'd say, yeah, but there's something else, that they're more pleasant, they're happier. And I started to think back on that research project where he showed an increase in theta state and learned that theta actually increases serotonin and oxytocin. So everything we do in life, right, we do for one reason, because we want to feel good. Well, as it turns out, Keith, and you know, that when we make feeling good our priority, and that's the theta state, not only are we achieving our ultimate desire of feeling good, we're better able to achieve our outer desires of whatever it may be, hitting the baseball, throwing a strike, or, you know, shooting a basket. And so when we see that theta state increase through the training and we see more joy as a byproduct, I mean, what's better than that? That's why I get up in the morning. I want to feel more joy every day, right? All of us.
Absolutely,
And
man.
so,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's the best. And seeing young athletes and young kids who, you know, may feel strained in school and strained and trying to compete, and they have their parents kind of, you know, keep your eye on the ball, all kinds of things that are being said to them, and they get very confused and lost. So being able to help guide them is incredibly gratifying.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So let's talk about next steps. So, you know, we've talked about, you know, what you do and how you do it, and we'll have a link to what you do on sportsvisionpros.com. But next steps for someone, if they wanted to get in contact with you through our link, what does it look like when someone reaches out to Buddy to learn more about this?
Right. They can contact me at zonemotion.com, and they'll have all the information there they need to move through the process and teach them how to get in the zone and live life, you know, at a more comfortable, successful level.
Yeah, and for our end of it, you know, keep visiting us on sportsvisionpros.com to learn about new technologies, new science, you know, have exciting conversations like this to learn things that certainly enlighten me and open my eyes to sort of things that I'm not aware of. And this is the excitement of having collaboration with medical professionals and professionals like Buddy here, who just, you know, knows more about baseball than I'll never know, and being able to share information back and forth with amazing people helps the world of sport and sport vision to continue to grow. So keep visiting us on sportsvisionpros.com for that. Check us out at skyfallsports.com to learn more about, you know, what's coming and how, you know, this exciting platform is going to be out here very soon to do some fun things, have some fun times, enjoy a game-like experience, and oh, by the way, train some of these visual skills that are relevant for physical and mental focus. So it's really kind of the medicine that tastes good for once. So we're looking forward to launching that, you know, globally and having some fun with that. So Buddy, couldn't thank you enough for joining me today, man. This was a blast, and look forward to doing it again at some time.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me, Keith. Really appreciate it.
Till next time, Dr. Keith Smithson. Take care.